And we'll take a look at the Class 4A with the season two-thirds complete. Each team has played 6 games with 3 to go. Camels of Campbell County show the way, 6-0, ranked number 1 as they have been all season long, and they have won 6 straight. Their last victory coming against Sheridan in a game delayed by a day because of the snowstorm, just like the Oil Bowl in Casper, but no problem, and I saw that coming. A 39-10 win over the Bronx in Campbell County. They will be at Rock Springs on this Friday. Next week, we'll host the Laramie Plainsmen, and then at Cheyenne East, which could be a pretty decent ball game. We'll just have to wait and see. Sheridan still ranked number 2. They are tied for second in the standings with a 5-1 mark. They have lost 1. Of course, that was the Oil Bowl loss, not even close, 10-39. Versus the Camels in Gillette. They'll be at Cheyenne Central, and that's going to be a tough one. That could be an upset and allow the Indians to climb back into the top 5. By the way, these rankings, courtesy of wildpreps.com, the coaches and media poll. So the Bronx at Central, then they'll host the Mustangs, and then we'll close out at Cheyenne South. Also 5-1 and ranked number 3, as they have won 1 game, and that was against their rival, Cheyenne Central, in the Capital Bowl, are the 5-1 T-Birds. They'll be at Laramie. Then Evanston will travel over to the capital city next week. They will close out hosting the number 1 ranked Camels. New to the top 5 is Evanston's opponent for tonight's 6 o'clock kickoff. 3-3 and 4th ranked Kelly Walsh with a big win. It doesn't happen all that often, but it did. A 21-20 overtime loss versus their rival, the Mustangs of Natrona County. By the way, the Mustangs dropped to number 5. I still think probably the second best team in the state, but we'll just have to wait and see. But all of Natrona's losses have been in overtime. The Trojans at Evanston tonight, 4th ranked with a 1-game win streak. Then they'll host Cheyenne Central and will be at Laramie to close out the regular season. The 3-3, 5th-ranked Natrona County Mustangs. Again, a tough loss in the Oil Bowl. It was delayed by a day, played last Saturday. They'll host Cheyenne South tonight. They'll be at Sheridan, tough one for the Mustangs there, and then versus the upstart Rock Springs Tigers to close the year out. Also at 3-3, the Cheyenne Central Indians, they've lost 1, the Capital Bowl matchup. They will be host Sheridan tonight in what should be a pretty good game. Then we'll be at Kelly Walsh in another good game, and then at Evanston to close out the regular season. The Red Devils have lost 2 in a row. They're 2-4, desperately need a win to keep pace and stay above some of those right below them who seem to be gaining a little ground. So they'll host the Trojans, be at Cheyenne East, the 3rd-ranked T-Birds and the Red Devils next week, and then close out at home against Cheyenne Central. Evanston with 5 home games this year, meaning they'll have 4 next year. Also at 2-4, Evanston does have the tiebreaker over the Plainsmen. The Plainsmen have 1-1 with their 19-3 victory over Cheyenne South. Laramie will host Cheyenne East tonight, then we'll be at Gillette, and then we'll host the Kelly Walsh Trojans. So not an easy go for the Plainsmen whatsoever. 1-5 getting their first victory of the year over the Red Devils are the Tigers. But, you know, when they go to Sheridan and, yeah, they don't score, but they hold the Bronx to 19, you've got to think things are kind of turning around for the Rock Springs Tigers. They got that win over Evanston after Evanston jumped out to the early lead, 15-7, but they will host the number 1 ranked Camels tonight, then be at South, and then we'll be at Natrona to close out the year. And finally, the Cheyenne South Bison, they're coming closer as you see some of the scores. 10-19 versus KW, and touchdown away from tying up the Plainsmen. But South will be at Natrona, they'll host Rock Springs, and then be at Sheridan to close out the year. You Warriors is good. Real good. Thanks. Now that we know that we made our home safe, we're definitely going to switch it. So again, here are your matchups for this Friday, October 11th. In Class 4A, number 1 Gillette at Rock Springs with a 6 p.m. kickoff. Available on these radio stations. I got to go with the Camels to go to 7-0, dropping the Tigers to 1-6. Number 2 Sheridan at Cheyenne Central, also a 6 p.m. kickoff. I'm going to go with the upset and the Indians winning at home versus the Bronx. That would drop the Bronx to 5-2 and raise Central to 4-3. Number 3, Cheyenne East at Laramie. I see the Thunderbirds rolling there, and that will give them sole possession, if I'm correct, of second place. Would put them 6-1. Number 4, Kelly Walsh at Evanston. I'm going with the Red Devils. I think they're going to bounce back from a tough loss, a game in which they know they did not play as they are capable. And I got to like number 5, Natrona at home with South coming to town, dropping South to 0-7, and it would make Natrona 4-3. This would make Kelly Walsh 3-4. Give the Red Devils also a 3-4 mark. And East would, again, be 6-1. Plainsman will drop to 2-5 if I have everything right. In Class 3A, Worland at Powell. Panthers will roll there. I think the Bearcats will take care of the Outlaws. Star Valley, I think, will upset Cody. Braves coming off a tough loss. Riverton at number 5. I'll go with the Wolverines. Buffalo and Lander. Well, some of these I'm just not going to make a comment on. Here's a big one, though. 3:30 this afternoon. It's the battle for Bridger Valley supremacy. Of course, Mountain View was the number 1 ranked team a couple of weeks ago, now out of the top 5, and they're taking on what has become a very potent ground attack that the Eagles are displaying. Mountain View at home, of course, those schools very, very close. I'm going to go with the Buffs in the upset, even though Lyman has climbed here in the rankings and statistics as of late. And the rest of the schedule as we go on down, you can take a look at it there, including a few games tomorrow, like the Kemmer Rangers hosting the Grable Buffaloes. This courtesy of wyopreps.com. And finally, we'll take a look at the statistics provided by wyopreps.com, courtesy of Dan Bleak, last week's scores and this week's schedule and the standings as we have already run down. Peak performances, well, the Campbells with 390 yards. It was Adam Habercorn of South, the individual best rusher with 213. Passing yards, Natrona 321, and Turner leads the way with that 321. In receiving yards, Talon Montgomery, is it Talon, I believe, of Cheyenne Central with 182. All-purpose yards, 638 rolled up by the Bronx, and 367 from Turner of Natrona. The individual best pass completions, well, Sheridan had 19, and that was from Kevin Eckert. Offensive points, East in that opening game against the Tigers, 59-7, I believe that ended up. 30 points scored by Montgomery of Central. Tackles, 77 by a team that's Central, and Derek Mattinson of Rock Springs with 15 in one game. I believe he is the all points leader in the state. We'll check that out. 180 defensive points, Central the best on the year, and Josh Harshman of Natrona, the coach's son, 31 defensive individual points in one game. Let's see if we can scroll down here just a little bit. The longest rush, Drew Berman of Laramie with an 86-yarder leads the state. The longest reception, Anderson of Natrona, Chase Anderson I believe that is, with 80 yards. Longest punt, 66 from Russell of Laramie. Longest punt return, Nick Gill of Sheridan with 68 yards. Longest kick return, Pearson of Laramie goes 95 yards. The longest field goal was kicked against the Red Devils, and that was Austin Fort, the Wyoming-bound QB, who booted a 43-yarder. So let's get down here and see the leaders by team. Gillette showing the way as far as rushing with 256 yards, and you see the teams as they stack up. Evanston in 5th place, averaging 170 on the ground per game. 133 for the Kelly Walsh Trojans, the Red Devils' opponent tonight. And that's kind of what we'll focus on here, but you can check out the rest of them, and you can always find these by checking stats at wyopreps.com. In team passing, the Red Devils ranked 8th with 83.8 per game. The loss of Bruce Lester has certainly not helped in that endeavor. Kelly Walsh is one step above the Red Devils, but averaging triple figures with 110 yards of passing per outing. So total team offense, Camel showing the way with 385, followed by the Bronx with 371, Natrona 356, then comes Central 341, East at 325, the Red Devils with 254, just a tad bit, about 10 yards more than the Trojans on a game basis, and then comes Laramie, Rock Springs, and South. Now we'll take a look at defense. Best against the rush in the state are the Camels, only yielding 115, followed by Natrona, Sheridan. Evanston has dropped into last place, yielding 236 yards on the ground. In pass defense, though, the Red Devils are number one, only allowing 69 yards. By the way, the Trojans, their rush defense, they give up 167.5, and the Trojans' pass defense giving up 111. So as far as overall team defense, as we look at Evanston, they are in 8th place, allowing 305 yards of rushing and passing combined. Kelly Walsh is in 4th place, giving up just 279. Individual offense, Daniel Sessions of Sheridan showing the way with 92.8 yards per game in rushing, so nobody over 100. And as we look, we don't see anybody represented from Evanston. We do, Hiram Peterson at 85.5, good for 4th place in the state. He was the state's leader after week 1. In passing, Kelly Walsh's Marcus Nolan is ranked 5th, or sits 5th, with 92.9 yards per game, and Kyler Wagstaff is 7th, throwing for 83.3 yards per outing. Receiving, you've got Dan Gocknauer at 55 yards per game for the Trojans. And nobody from the... there's Alec Johnson with 31.8, cracking the top 10 in 9th place. So all-purpose offense. Bartlett, the quarterback and great wrestler from East, showing the way with 240 yards per game. As we continue to look down here, it's Marcus Nolan of the two teams squaring off at Kay Fackrell Stadium tonight. The only one in all-purpose top 10 yardage with 130 per game. The QB, actually, I think that's been Kurt Dirkshey, I think, is quarterbacking. We'll check that out for sure. And punt returns. Neither of the Red Devils, Turner Hyatt, 3.7. But the Red Devils not showing in that top 10 through the first 6 weeks. In kick returns, the Trojans show, again, Turner Hyatt, 31 on the average. And Hiram Peterson with 25.3, good for 7th place. Scoring, nobody for either squad in tonight's Red Devil game represented in that top 10. As far as punting, Kenny Harold of the Trojans, 34.2. And Bruce Lester, of course, Kyler Wagstaff has had to take that over with Lester's absence. Not sure on the status of Lester. Hope he can return, but suffered that scary moment in the last home game. In kicking, I don't see any Trojans or Red Devils listed there. Individual defense. Now it's Cooper Myrich. How about that? Cheyenne Central, 18.3 is what he's averaging. Harshman was leading the state for most of the year. Then comes Mattinson after that one performance that we noted above of Rock Springs with 18 per game. Zach Taylor, 17.3. Josh Harshman, 17.1. Judd Stewart of Natrona is 16. As far as the Red Devils and Trojans represented here, Cooper Adams is in 8th place for Kelly Walsh with 14.2 defensive points per game. As we continue to roll down here, no, we don't need that. Thanks a lot, Apple. Appreciate that. Will Kishpaw is the leader for the Red Devils with 12.2 per game. And right on his heels, Eric Sowers, 11.9 per outing defensively. As we look down, another Trojan of mention, Brett Andrews, averaging 11 defensive points per game. And Brandon Johnson, wearing number 16, 10.3. This is the top 50 that they go through and post. Evanston also represented by Kyler Wagstaff with 9.3. Hope I'm not missing anybody here. Oh, there's Clay Carlson of Kelly Walsh with 9.4. And that looks like it about runs it down as far as the Red Devils and Trojans are concerned. Let's get down to both those teams' individual team statistics and see who some of the players to watch might be tonight. Here's the Tigers. So as we just scroll on through here, here's the Mustangs. There's the Plainsmen, so the Trojans should be next. We'll see who else to watch for as far as Kelly Walsh. Again, averaging 133 on the ground, 110 through the air, so good balance there for 244 per game. Giving up more, I think 279 on the average versus what their opponents are doing. Scoring 15.3, allowing 22.2. 7 rushing first downs, yielding 7.7. In the turnovers, they're -1 on the season, where their opponents then are +1. 33.7 on the punts. Trojan scores again, lost the opener 12-52 versus the Camels in the opening week. Lost against Sheridan 10-26. Got their first win against the Tigers 27-13. Defeated South 19-10. Lost a close one to East 3-12 and defeated their rivals Natrona County in the Oil Bowl last Saturday 21-20. Austin Sullen's the leading rusher, 51.8 per game, wearing number 44. Then comes Nolan with 37.8. Cooper Adams averaging 20. Tanny Gailey, number 13, averaging 12. Kurt Dershey averaging 10.8 for their top 5. Nolan and Dershey will both, I think, though I heard Dershey was going to start. Nolan was averaging 99 or 92.2 through the air. Dershey 18.3. Reading receiver Dan Gotchenauer, 55.3. Then Cooper Adams, as you see, 12.8. Tanner Gailey, 11.8. Turner Hyatt, 11.7. Clay Carlson, 10 receiving yards per game, 7.2 for Brandon Johnson. And then there's the total number of receptions. So Gotchenauer, number 10, is the main receiving target, it does appear. Hyatt and Adams will be back to return punts. Hyatt, Sullivan, Carlson, some of the others to possibly return kickoffs. Again, Nolan is their offensive leader at 130 per game. Then Austin Sullins with 69. Gotchenauer, the receiver, 58.3. Hyatt with 51. Cooper Adams, 33. So a lot of weapons for the Trojans. 29.2 for Dershey. Clay Carlson, 24.3. 23.8 for Tanny Gailey. And scoring, Seth Ramsa, averaging 3.3. Adams with 3 points per game. Nolan with 2. Sullins with 2. Carlson, Hyatt, Dershey, Andrews, and Gotchenauer with 1 per game. Kenny Harold punting, averaging 34.2. On the net, 34.2, so not a lot of returns. Good coverage, would sound like. Kicking, Ramsa, that's why he leads them in scoring. 45.3 on his kickoffs. Kenny Harold, 42.4, so a couple of guys who can come in and kick the ball. Kick attempts, well, 4 of 4. His long's 36. He's made 8 of 10 extra points. Again, Adams, their defensive leader, followed by Andrews, Johnson, Carlson, Guile or Gill, Dershey, Gailey, Gotchenauer, Hendry, Hyatt, Goodman, and you can check out the rest of them there as we'll scroll on down to the Red Devils. There's the Camels, flexing some muscle this year. Don't know if that train's going to be interrupted, so to speak. Red Devils averaging 170 on the ground, but 83.8 through the air, 254 on the year, giving up 236.5. That is bottom of the barrel in Class 4A, but number 1 against the pass, only allowing 69. So they give up 305, averaging 254. You see some of the other stats as far as punt and kick, some of your special teams play. Red Devils averaging 12.2 points. They're allowing 26.7. In the turnover category, they were plus, and it looks like they're still plus. They've had 3 fumbles and 5 interceptions. They're +1 as they've recovered 5 and picked off 4. So their opponent's -1. And then you see some of the kicking statistics. Again, a 12-7 win over South at home to start the year. Lost at Campbell County 13-52 on the road. Lost to the Bronx in a much closer game than that score would indicate. Laramie, a win on the road against the Plainsmen, 21-14. One of the better games Evanston has put together, especially that first half. Lost to the Trojans, I believe that was, the Mustangs 6-38, I believe it was, and suffered a tough break in Rock Springs last week, 7-5. So the Red Devils 2-4, 3-3 are the Kelly Walsh Trojans. Peterson averaging 85 yards per game, followed by Kishpa's 53.8. Caleb Early, who comes in 10.3. Alec Johnson 8.2. Usually when he gets behind and fills in at quarterback, running the option. Wagstaff at 6.5. Lester at 5. Covelo, who has just joined the lineup, averaging 1.5 yards per carry, but he hasn't had many. Kyler Wagstaff 83.3 through the air, and Alec Johnson just a half yard. Johnson, leading receiver at 31.8, almost 32, followed by Lester. Don't know about his status. Hope he's able to come back. Derek Smith, 15.2. Kishpa, 5.5 out of the backfield. Fisher, 5. Rest of them go into, they've made catches, but they've been for negative yardage. Fisher, the leader in punt returns, followed by Peterson. Lester was the leader in kick returns. Of course, it was a punt return, I believe, is where he got that injury, or sustained that injury. Peterson, 16.8. All-purpose offense, Peterson over the century mark with 102.5, 89.8 for Wagstaff, 59.3 for Kishpa, Lester 56.3, Johnson 40.5, 16.3 for Smith, 10.3 for Early, 6.7 for Fisher, Leland 2, and Covelo 1.5. Scoring 4 points per game for Peterson, 3 for Alec Johnson, 2.3 for Lester, Ian Fisher with 1, same for Kyler Wagstaff, and Takazi and Octavio Reyes, as you see, a little less than 1 for each of those Red Devils. Lester was the leading punter, Wagstaff averaging 30, having to step in and kind of do it all. Cole Wilkinson, 54, 33.8, though, for Takazi, so he's kicked many more. Kick attempts, 4 of 6 on extra points is Paolo Takazi, the Italian exchange student. 1 of 2 is Octavio Reyes on the season from extra points. Kishpa, the leader defensively, followed by Sowers. Caleb Early, right on his tail. Wagstaff at 9.3. Peterson, 7.5. Corbin Wagstaff, 6.5. Bruce Lester, 6. Fisher, 5.5. Miles Piper, 5.2. Skylar Bond, 4.9. Cole Wilkinson, 4.7. Although, the big fella often double and sometimes even triple team. Reed Christenot, 4 defensive points per game. Alec Johnson, almost 4 at 3.8. Zach Guild at 3.5. Covelo with 1. Smith and Tucker Leland, 0.7. Ammon Holmes, 0.5. Lamb at 57. Takazi, 0.3. Same for Octavio Reyes and Lowry. Dylan Matson. And then Connor Martin, Donald Johnson, 0.2. So those are the Red Devil statistics. Kickoff again, scheduled for 6 o'clock. Join us at 12:40 a.m. stereo KEVA for pregame coverage beginning about 5:25, 5:30, right in there. And catch the games online. If you know people outside of the listening area who would like to tune in the Red Devils, send them to 1240keva.com or kevaonline.com. Go Red Devils!